What is up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. This is the main event deep dive for the main event of UFC Vegas 32. Corey Sandhagen going against TJ Dillashaw. And what a main event we have. The return of TJ Dillashaw coming off of a 2.5-year layoff. I'm going against Corey Sandhagen, somebody coming off of back-to-back knockouts. He's been looking fantastic. I cannot wait for this fight and this fight card as a whole. This fight card is phenomenal on paper. I'm really looking forward to it. Before we get started, if you guys can leave a like on this video, also subscribe if you have not subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on the other content throughout the week. I have my full card breakdown and prediction videos coming out on Tuesday morning and a live stream on Friday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time as well. And as always, I'm here with our Uncle Weezy. Uncle Weezy, are you looking forward to this fight, and are you looking forward to the card as a whole?
This card is going to be spectacular. I'm really looking forward to it. And what a way to end it off with these two guys here. 29-year-old Corey Sandhagen, the 35-year-old TJ Dillashaw, who's a former champion, coming off almost a 2-year layoff. Two really interesting, really unusual, explosive strikers. Man, this is such a great main event. And then if you look at the undercard and even the rest of the main card, some great stylistic matchups, some great violent spots, such a great card as a whole. But what a great main event, and I can't wait to get into all the stats with you.
100%. I'm so excited for this fight. I cannot wait for it. It's a phenomenal main event. It should be very, very fun. So I say we get into it here, and we're going to start with the tail of the tape, and we will start with Corey Sandhagen, who is 29 years old. He has 5'11" with a 70-inch reach, training out of Elevation Fight Team. Very good camp there. As for TJ Dillashaw, 35 years old, 5'6", and a 67-inch reach. So right off the bat, there are some things we need to mention. The first thing being TJ Dillashaw is 35 years old. 35 years old for a bantamweight is not the best look in the world. Another thing we need to mention, TJ Dillashaw is coming off of a big layoff. He's coming off of a PED suspension. We have not seen TJ Dillashaw fight in 2 years and 5 months. His last fight against Henry Cejudo. And he's also going to be at a 5-inch height disadvantage. And he's also going to be at a 3-inch reach disadvantage. So in terms of the tail of the tape, it is telling us a lot of things here. So we'll take a look at the last couple fights between the two guys. Corey Sandhagen, he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He won a split decision over John Lineker. He had a decision win over Rafael Assunção. He had that submission loss in the first round to Aljamain Sterling. He knocked out Marlon Moraes, and he knocked out Frankie Edgar. Those knockouts were both phenomenal knockouts, and he's on a 2-fight knockout streak, and he's been looking, very, very good. As far as TJ Dillashaw, he did win a unanimous decision over Rafael Assunção. Same thing, won a decision over John Lineker, knocked out Cody Garbrandt once, and then knocked him out again in the second fight, and then lost by knockout to Henry Cejudo, and we have not seen the guy since. So in terms of the tail of the tape, like I mentioned, lots of advantage for the Sandhagen side, especially the age as well and the layoff, but I'm curious to get into these stats and see what really sticks out, Weezy.
Yeah, and you really just nailed it right there. In terms of the tail of the tape, you got a really nice advantage there for Sandhagen, and then Sandhagen's been the much busier fighter, while TJ Dillashaw has been on almost a 2-year layoff. So let's try to find some other advantages here for Sandhagen, or see if we can find ways for Dillashaw to kind of even this out. If we look at the pro experience, you got Dillashaw with 4 more fights, clocking in at 20, with Sandhagen coming in at 16. Really good records for both of these guys, especially seeing as how good a competition they've been fighting. 14-2 for Corey, 16-4 for TJ, and almost 100 minutes more in the cage overall for Dillashaw over his career, which has been about 5 years more than Corey's career. So TJ at 35 has been fighting as a pro for 11 years and 3 months. So he started at about the age of 24, while for Corey, he's 29 years old, had a 6-year mixed martial arts career. So he started about at the age of 23. TJ Dillashaw has got twice as many fights in the UFC as Sandhagen does. So if you look at Dillashaw, 16 out of his 20 professional fights have been at the UFC level. So this guy not only is a former champion, but he's somebody that has been fighting at a very high level for a long time. Also on The Ultimate Fighter. That's a real meat grinder, just even being on that show. And then, Sandhagen, 8 UFC fights, and he's 7-1. Only lost to the current champion, Aljo. So, 56 minutes of cage time for Corey, 191 for Dillashaw. So we do see that once we get into the experience numbers, that Dillashaw is a more experienced guy, a lot more time in the cage, but not too much where he's been, it's not like he's got too much tread on the tires at only 20 fights, and fought, 80% of his career at the UFC level and been on the Ultimate Fighter, while about only half of Sandhagen's career has been at the UFC level, but that's still a really impressive number for somebody with only 16 fights. So yeah, definitely these guys are both pretty experienced, but Dillashaw's got an experience advantage here. And if we look at, how these guys are winning fights with the finish stats, we see that both of these guys are pretty good finishers and have very similar numbers. Corey Sandhagen overall, a 64% finish rate and a 69% finish rate for Dillashaw. And both of these guys finish a little bit more than twice as much by knockout as they do by submission. And at the UFC level, you got a 71% finish rate for Sandhagen and a 66% finish rate for Dillashaw. So not only are these guys finishing at a high level overall, they're both also finishing at a very high level in the UFC. And if we look at how they get finished, Corey Sandhagen has had 2 professional losses. One of them came by submission, one of them came by decision. And for Dillashaw, 4 losses, 2 of them by knockout, 2 of them by decision. So yeah, in terms of finishing stats and in terms of pro experience, probably give a little bit of an edge to Dillashaw here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, definitely edge to Dillashaw in the experience as well. Of course, he's had the longer, career by a decent amount, but of course, he did not fight for 2.5 years. Got to factor that in a little bit, but yeah, Dillashaw definitely more experience. Sandhagen decent experience himself. As far as the finish stats, both guys, like you said, very good finishers. I don't know if we'll see a finish in this fight. Something to mention, and you mentioned as well, Sandhagen has never been knocked out, which is a very good sign in this fight, whereas Dillashaw has been knocked out twice. I think he's been dropped, I want to say like 5 or 6 times in the UFC. Dillashaw, something like that. I'm not quite sure on the number, but we have seen Dillashaw hurt quite a bit. I don't think Sandhagen has ever been knocked down, if I'm not mistaken. No, he has not, so that's good. So I think in terms of durability, you probably got to favor Sandhagen here. But if there's going to be a finish, I really think either guy could finish here. Any terms, any thoughts on who would finish this fight if there is a finish or if it does go to decision?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, because both of these guys have shown a lot of finishing power, and I can think of, in particular, TJ Dillashaw has come back from adversity a couple of times in the Garbrandt fights. Both times he got caught. Once at the end of the first round in the first fight, right on the bell there, man, he got caught right on the chin by Cody. And if there was maybe another 10 seconds left in that round, he probably would have got finished. But he came back in the second round, landed a head kick, and wound up finishing him later in that round. And the same thing in the second fight, it was a little bit of a back and forth. And I can remember Sandhagen's third fight in the UFC, man, he was in trouble with Yuri Alcantara. He had an arm bar so deep, his arm was bent the wrong way. He just refused to tap. And then, he definitely blasted back from that after he got out of that submission attempt and just put it on him. And, so both of these guys can come back from adversity. So they're both really tough. Which one of these guys would get finished first? It's kind of hard to say. Dillashaw got finished really quick by Cejudo, but that was down at 125. And we know when you deplete yourself too much, you're much more likely to become chinny. And he got caught quick there. That happened in less than a minute, so we didn't even get into the flow of that fight. I would say that I would probably pick the over here just because both of these guys are very tough. Sandhagen never been knocked down in the UFC. And in TJ Dillashaw's 16 UFC fights, he's been knocked down 3 times. But, man, he's fought Cody Garbrandt a couple of times, John Lineker, Henry Cejudo. I mean, he's fought a who's who. He's fought Renan Barão twice, former champion. He's fought a lot of studs. So I wouldn't call Dillashaw chinny by any stretch of the imagination either. And because Dillashaw is not a huge submission artist, and that would be probably the way that I would see Corey maybe getting finished, would probably be more by submission than by knockout. So, yeah, I could see this fight going the distance. You know, it would probably be juiced a little bit to the over, but I'm not sure where the bookies have it.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the odds and all that a little bit later. But yeah, Sandhagen's been finishing lately, though. I don't know, but yeah. So we'll get into the striking stats here. Can't wait to get into these, and then also we'll get into the grappling stats after that. I think there's some very important stuff to note there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the striking stats here. Corey Sandhagen, 14.21 significant strikes attempted per minute. That is some crazy, crazy volume. And he's landing 6.85. He's landing at almost a 50% clip, averaging a knockdown on over 1% of his significant strikes landed and over one knockdown per 15 minutes, while Dillashaw is landing 5.23 out of 12.7, 41% accuracy, just as powerful with 0.9% and 0.7 knockdowns per 15 minutes. So both of these guys, very impressive. Both of these guys are landing so many more significant strikes than they're absorbing. I mean, the ratio for Sandhagen is almost 3 significant strikes landed more per minute, almost twice as many he lands as he absorbs, 6.85 to 3.89. It's 5.23 to 2.95 for Dillashaw, and both of these guys have been fighting great competition. It's not like they're out there crushing cans. Dillashaw more impressive defensively at 65.57%, but nothing to sneeze at with Sandhagen at 60% or 59.22% striking defense. And while Dillashaw has been hurt, remember he's fighting, former champions and champions, and he's only been knocked down 3 times in 566 significant strikes absorbed, 3 times in 16 fights at a very high level. So not what I would call chinny by any stretch of the imagination here. And Sandhagen, who's fighting guys like Moraes and Assunção and Lineker and Edgar, he's not getting knocked down at all. So he's shown power and also shown a good amount of durability too. So yeah, definitely. These guys are both very interesting too. Corey Sandhagen is constantly switching stances, so he's hard to get a beat on. And TJ Dillashaw's movement is very unusual. In and out, some very unusual footwork, great head movement, great body movement. He's in and out very fast. Both of these guys are going to be very difficult to hit in this fight. They have really great defense, really great footwork. They're both exceptionally fast. But, of course, we got a 3-inch reach advantage and a 5-inch height advantage for Corey Sandhagen. And when I was taping TJ Dillashaw, I was trying to find something stylistically in his UFC experience that would look like a Sandhagen fight. I couldn't find anything like that. Sandhagen is going to be a very unique puzzle for Dillashaw to solve here on the feet, and vice versa, because Dillashaw moves very uniquely as well. He's got very strange footwork, very effective. What are you thinking? Who are you seeing having the striking advantage in this one?
Man, it's so tough. Like it's especially hard to tell because of the layoff and the PED suspension and all that, and the age of Dillashaw. But I was kind of thinking, like, if Dillashaw does come back and he does look like he did, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I actually do think the striking will be competitive. I think Dillashaw's pressure could pose some problems on Sandhagen, but it's hard because we don't know if that same Dillashaw is here. How did that layoff affect him? He is now a 35-year-old bantamweight. So I really don't know all that much, but I think the striking is very competitive. What I will say is both guys are pretty dominant in the striking. I'm taking a look at their significant strike differentials, and Sandhagen, a 2.96 significant strike differential, a 59% striking defense. That's phenomenal. He's landing almost 3 more significant strikes than his opponents. You can't really, get much better than that, especially, with the competition he's fighting. And then you have TJ Dillashaw with a phenomenal 2.34 significant strike differential and a 65% striking defense. Like, those are very dominant striking numbers. So I think both guys are very, very good strikers. But as far as, saying who's going to have the striking advantage, I'm really struggling with that aspect of the fight, just based off the fact that we really don't know what we're going to see out of Dillashaw. Will he have some cage rust? Will he come in? Will he not look like he did, say 2-3 years ago? That's kind of what I'm struggling with, is that layoff, that PED suspension, and now that he is a 35-year-old bantamweight.
Yeah, and that's, we don't see that in the numbers. How is he going to look, when he comes back? And even when he would show that movement, you can't have that kind of movement in a fight for 5 straight rounds. It's just too much. You'll get tired, So you have to pick your spots in order to do that. And you see that kind of movement, that in and out, that constant frenetic pace. It just doesn't last for 5 rounds. And luckily, he's been getting people out of there pretty quickly anyway, so he hasn't needed to do that. But I'm struggling to know which Dillashaw we're going to see. But if we see that old Dillashaw that was knocking out Garbrandt and looking really good doing it, it's going to be a very interesting stylistic matchup on the feet. But where we can maybe find an advantage for one of these guys is in the grappling stats. So Corey Sandhagen, 8 UFC fights, only 8 takedown attempts, but he has gotten 4 of them for 50% takedown percent, excellent takedown percentage, but he's not an active wrestler. 1.07 takedowns per 15 minutes, 20% control time. Now we see Dillashaw much more active as a wrestler, 56 takedown attempts in 16 fights. So he's going for more than 3 takedown attempts per fight. He's getting 21 out of 56, 37.5% takedown percentage. They're not going to put him in the Hall of Fame for that, but that's not bad either. That's certainly not bad. 1.64 takedown per 15 minutes is very good, and 0.94 sub attempts per 15 minutes. So when he is taking people down, he's also being active with submissions. So getting a little more control time than Sandhagen at 23%. But what's interesting about Dillashaw is that while he's controlling his opponents only 4% more of the time than Sandhagen is, TJ Dillashaw in his 16 UFC fights has only been controlled 1% of his UFC cage time. That's really impressive, especially at the level that this guy's fought. Some really good grapplers too. So this guy is not somebody that you're going to beat with offensive wrestling. So we can kind of throw out the 4 of 8 for Sandhagen. It looks like Sandhagen is going to win this fight with his striking if he's going to win it. While it looks like Dillashaw could also potentially win it with his striking, but his offensive wrestling is also there. So let's look at the defensive wrestling of Corey Sandhagen. In his 8 fights, he's only had 13 takedown attempts against him, so not a lot, about 1.5 per fight. So a very low volume of takedowns that he's seen, but he's not doing a good job of stopping them. Only a 30% takedown defense. So he's being taken down 2.4 times per 15 minutes, and he's having 1.33 submission attempts against him per 15 minutes. He's being controlled, though, only 12.5% of his cage time. That's exactly 1/8 of his time in the cage that his opponent has his back up against the cage or his back against the mat. So Sandhagen, even though he is easy to take down, he's not easy to control. One thing I want to look at in the advanced stats, if we can bring those up, Brady, is I want to point out just one particular fight here in Dillashaw's career, and it was the John Lineker fight. Both of these guys have fought John Lineker, and Sandhagen beat him by split decision, and Dillashaw beat him by unanimous decision. And when Dillashaw beat Lineker, it was what got him to the title shot against Cody Garbrandt, where he won the title. So if you look at that fight, it was a unanimous decision win, 900 seconds in the cage, but TJ Dillashaw amassed 413 seconds of control time, which is, about 7 minutes. About 7 minutes out of 15, he controlled Lineker with his back against the mat, and he was 5 for 6 on his takedown attempts. And he advanced position 8 times in that fight. So that is one instance that I can think of where he actually used the control time in order to, and his grappling and his offensive wrestling, in order to get a win in a 3-round fight against a very dangerous striker in Lineker. So TJ Dillashaw can absolutely use his offensive wrestling in order to win fights, and we did see him do that. And when he did that, he got rewarded with the title shot. So if I were him, I would want to go back to that wrestling here against Corey Sandhagen, who's going to be really confusing, switching stances. He's going to be in and out. He's going to be much longer, much taller, and he throws those knees up the middle, and they're so dangerous. What are you thinking when you see the grappling stats in this fight?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like you mentioned, he took down John Lineker 5 times. And of course, in the next fight against Cody Garbrandt, I mean, you're not really going to take down Cody Garbrandt. He's very hard to take down, very hard to hold down. Of course, you're not taking down Henry Cejudo. So, I agree. I mean, if I was TJ Dillashaw, I would go and I would try to take down Sandhagen as much as possible. The problem with that is, Sandhagen has a really bad takedown defense on paper, 30%. Like, you can't get much worse than that. And it's something he really needs to improve, because that's definitely not a good look, because guys can get him down and they can get him down very easy. But you also mentioned that when guys do take him down, it is very, very hard to hold this guy down. He has a very good get-up game. He's always threatening with submissions as well. So I think the reasons why, he doesn't really care about getting taken down, because he knows he can get back up. He can threaten with submissions. He can get reversals, get on top. So I think he really doesn't give a crap about that takedown defense. But again, it's really not a good look. So, Dillashaw, I do think he should come in here. I do think he should get takedowns. I think that's a path to victory. It's just, we talk about it a lot. Like, if you go for a takedown and you're either unsuccessful, or if you get it and your opponent pops right back up, that's going to expend a ton of energy on the Dillashaw side. You also talked about the movement that he uses, that expends a ton of energy. So if he does choose to go with that wrestling heavy game plan, my question is, do you think he could keep that up for 5 rounds?
That's the thing about a 5-round fight. And, you can absolutely keep it up if the first time you shoot a takedown, you get it, and then you stay on top for the rest of the round. And then the next round comes out and you strike for a minute and you have one efficient takedown attempt. It works. You get the guy flat on his back, and now you can work from the top. Now he's carrying your weight. He might just get just as tired as you are. But when you're shooting 10 takedown attempts and not getting any of them, that's when the wrestling gets really tiring. And one cheeky little stat here, by the way, which is kind of funny about Sandhagen, we've talking about how bad his takedown defense is. Well, he's 7-1 in the UFC, and his only opponent who shot a takedown on him and didn't succeed was the guy who beat him, Aljamain Sterling, 0 for 1 on takedown attempts. Everybody else, 1 for 1, loss. 4 for 6, loss. 1 for 2, loss. 1 for 1, loss. 1 for 1, loss. 1 for 1, loss. So everybody that's taken down Corey Sandhagen has lost to him. The 2 guys who haven't taken him down are 1-1 against him. So that's kind of odd, But, this fight's a different fight. We'll see how it shakes out. But maybe we get to the strength of schedule now.
Yes, sir.
All right. So bring back, I'll bring up the ratios here. So, yeah, we got Corey Sandhagen. Average opponent for Corey Sandhagen is 8.75 wins and 3.75 losses, with 12.5 total fights and a 2.33 ratio. Very impressive. The average Dillashaw opponent, 6.38 and 3.69 for 10.06 total fights and a 1.73 ratio. So very impressive as well. Sandhagen a little bit better on paper with my metric, but both are fighting very high level of competition. Corey Sandhagen, in his wins, he's beating a guy with an average record of 8.43 and 3.86, 12.29 total fights, 2.19 ratio. For Dillashaw, it's 5.75 and 3.58 record is the average guy that he beats, 9.33 total fights, 1.6 ratio. Also very impressive. Sandhagen a little bit better according to my metric. And then for the losses, the average opponent that beats Corey Sandhagen has an 11-3 UFC record, 14 total fights, 3.67 ratio, while the average guy that beats Dillashaw 8.25 and 4 for 12.25 total fights, 2.06 ratio. So both of these guys are fighting incredibly tough schedules. If we go back to the advanced stats, we can kind of take a look at it here. We'll start with Sandhagen. His 7 wins. Austin Arnett 1-4. That's his debut. And then beats veteran Yuri Alcantara, but he was in a really tough spot in that fight, and his toughness got him through that. 10-7. Mario Bautista, his only UFC loss came to Corey Sandhagen. He's 2-1. Lineker, 12-4. Assunção, 11-5. Marlon Moraes, 5-4, and then Edgar, 18-9. Only loss, he got subbed by Aljamain Sterling. So it was his ground game that failed him there against Sterling, but Sterling's a very high level, very tricky grappler. Well, if we look at Dillashaw's wins, going back to the very beginning, got some cans on this list. We got Willel Watson, Vaughn Lee, Issei Tamura, Hugo Viana, Mike Easton. But then we go, it's Renan Barao, and then it was Joe Soto on less than 24 hours notice, and then Barao again. And then the wins are Assunção, Lineker, and then 2 wins over Garbrandt. And the only losses come to Henry Cejudo at flyweight. Dominic Cruz, we know what an interesting puzzle he is. Rafael Assunção back in 2013, and then John Dodson. So both of these guys are fighting incredible competition. If we look at the pattern for Dillashaw, it goes a loss and then 4 wins, a loss and then 4 wins, a loss and then 4 wins, and he's coming off a loss. So if his pattern holds up, he's due for a 4-fight winning streak, while Sandhagen is just kicking ass and taking names unless somebody gets him to the ground and gets him in a bad spot. And I don't know if he's capable of doing that, Dillashaw. I think Dillashaw is capable of getting it to the ground. Is he capable of holding him there and subbing him? Probably not. But he could win a couple of rounds there. But this being a 5-round fight, I think it's going to be whoever gets the better of the striking exchanges here. And conditioning is going to be a huge factor. And we've seen good conditioning out of Dillashaw for sure. But my God, the conditioning and the heart out of Corey Sandhagen cannot be ignored. He's got fantastic conditioning. He trains at elevation. This is such a great fight, man. I'm leaning Sandhagen here. I don't know which way you're going.
Yeah, I'm kind of struggling with this one, to be honest. I'm going to lean Sandhagen as well, just because of all the things that I've mentioned. The measurables, for one, Sandhagen being 6 years younger, Dillashaw coming back off of a 2-year layoff. He has not fought in 2 years, 5 months, coming off of a PED suspension as well, a 35-year-old bantamweight. So, Sandhagen's going to be the younger guy, more so in his prime. We don't know what we're going to see from a Dillashaw who has not fought in so long. You also have the 5-inch height advantage for Corey Sandhagen, and also the 3-inch reach advantage for Corey Sandhagen, which is going to be definitely useful in a fight that, in my opinion, probably does stay standing for the majority of the fight. But I don't know. I mean, Dillashaw, if he does come back, if he does look, how he looked, say, against, Cody Garbrandt in the both Garbrandt fights, if he looked how he did against John Lineker, I think it's going to be a very close, competitive fight for the most part. But the problem is, I don't know if, Dillashaw will come back off of a 2.5-year layoff and, look good, coming off of a suspension for PEDs. Those are just the question marks I have. But we kind of take a look at the odds here, and we do see Sandhagen as a pretty big favorite, which is interesting because I remember when he fought Marlon Moraes, and he was only like -110, -120, something crazy like that. It's crazy that we now see him as a really big favorite, moderate favorite against TJ Dillashaw here. And so Sandhagen did open up -170, currently -185. And Dillashaw opening up +145 and currently +160. So I don't know. I like Sandhagen, honestly. To be honest, I'm not in love with the line, but for all the things I did mention, I will slightly lean Sandhagen. I don't know if I'll get on a bet here. As far as the over/under goes, they did set the over/under at 3.5 rounds. The under is -125. The over is -105. Again, I'm probably leaning the over. We talked about how durable both guys are. Sandhagen has never been knocked out. Dillashaw has been dropped a few times, but very tough himself. So I can see this going over. I don't know if I'll get there at the betting window, though. As far as like placing a bet or in this fight, is anything really sticking out in terms of the lines?
Yeah, not particularly, man. I mean, there's no props on this other than the over under 3.5, and the fight does or doesn't go to decision right now on best fight odds. So I'm not seeing much here, but yeah, I mean, I like Sandhagen here, but the thing is that we just don't know what Dillashaw is going to look like coming off this layoff, coming off the PED suspension. Those are serious red flags, but he could wind up looking great, you know. And we do know that there's some recency bias baked into this line with those spectacular knockouts of Moraes and then Edgar by Sandhagen, you know. And I mean, you just got to go to the fight before that, because when he got dusted in the first round. So, you know, there could be some recency bias, and there is, in that minus 180 line against a former champion in TJ. But how is he going to look now that he's not able to cheat anymore? We got USADA testing him. You know, he's not going to be able to, you know, yeah, he was using performance-enhancing drugs. He got caught red-handed.
Yep.
So, you know, we don't know what this new TJ Dillashaw that's, you know, not going to be on performance enhancers is going to look like. Almost a 2-year layoff. A very interesting puzzle to solve in Sandhagen here. I see why the line's where it's at, but I'm not running to the window to lay that kind of juice against a guy like Sandhagen, where I just don't necessarily, I mean, against a guy like Dillashaw, where I just don't have the information of what he's going to look like coming off this layoff.
Yeah, it's hard to count out Dillashaw here, but I'll go with Sandhagen. Don't feel, you know, confident enough to run to the betting window and lay the minus 185. But as far as a straight pick, I will go there. I'll have to wait and see, and when the props come out, maybe something does stick out. But as of now, they're probably going to pass on the main event for the most part, but we'll see when the props come out there. So, yeah, any final thoughts on the fight? I'm going Sandhagen. You're going Sandhagen as well. Anything else you wanted to really point out?
Not particularly, other than I like that the over 3.5 is a little less juice than the under 3.5. We talked about how tough both of these guys are. That's the bet that's sticking out to me, but you know, I'm not running the window to bet over 3.5 at minus 105 here, but I think it goes over 3.5. I think this is going to be an interesting fight. Both these guys are tough.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning the over as well, but again, just don't know if I'll get there. I think it's a good card as a whole. I think there's a ton of great betting opportunities. I do want to shout out that me and Uncle Weezy did go live on Sunday for a show called Stat Diggers. If you have not seen it, go check that out. We did basically what we did here for every single fight in more of a condensed version, but lots of good information there. That's about all I got. You can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the numbers. My full card breakdown and prediction video will be out on Tuesday morning, live stream on Friday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, as always. And then every Saturday, 1 hour prior to when the prelims start, I'll kick it over to Uncle Weezy. Uncle Weezy, where can they find you and what do you have going on for the week?
So I'm going to be doing balls deep breakdowns on my YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy. I'm going to pick probably 4 fights this week. I'm leaning right now towards the Chris Daukaus Shamil Abdurakhimov fight, towards Brendan Allen against Puna Soriano is going to be a good one. I want to do Elkins Minner, and I want to do the other one that you requested, which is going to be Costa Giannis.
Oh, yeah.
And there are some really good fights this week, and I want to kind of really get balls deep into the stats and you know, give you guys a really full picture of what those 4 fights are going to look like. Maybe we can find some betting angles that we like. So yeah, just come to Uncle Weezy's YouTube channel. Check me out there. I'm on Twitter at MMA Weezy. I'm starting to work up a lather and get comfortable with Twitter over there. So come check me out there. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you having me on, Brady.
Anytime. All right, guys, that's about it. You guys can leave a like. That'd be much, much appreciated as always. And we will talk to you soon. Good luck for UFC Vegas 32. Let's make some money this week, guys. See ya.